across the years, there have been an enormous number of doll releases from the Robert Tonner Company with enormous numbers of different body types, so it can be really hard to know what to expect when you're buying a new doll. Down below, you can see a various range of the majority of different doll types that have come out. The first body was released all the way back in 1999, and the very last one is from 2022. You can see that there have been many different changes and variations across the time. So, how do you know what you're going to get? Let's have a deeper look at the different body types, the variations, and what to expect when you're expecting a new doll. This group of dolls represents the most well-known and most common of the body types that has been released. It's known as the Tyler Wentworth body, and there are all sorts of variations, because this is the one that started everything way back in 1999 with what's known as the straight arm body. That's the girl on the left. You can see that she has bending knees. This doll always had bending knees, unlike dolls like Jean Marshall and Alexandra Fairchild Ford, who were originally released with straight arms and straight legs. Tyler Wentworth always had bending knees, but you can see that she didn't have really any other articulation. Her arms are just one piece, they bend at the shoulder, and there is no articulation at the bust or the hips. She went through many different changes through the times. The second variation of the doll adapted to having bending elbows so that you could get a little bit more posability out of her. To be honest, these two dolls are really very similar. If you do like to be able to bend your doll's arms, then obviously that's an advantage, but she can't do much else. The real changes started coming with the third variation of the body. This doll is known as the articulated torso doll because she developed a joint just below her bust in the torso. That doesn't seem significant, but what is more significant is the difference that adapted at her hips. This doll here has hips that can spread apart so that she can have significantly more poses. This doll here, she only bends forward and back. And to me, that is the biggest advantage. I really like this body, even though she doesn't have bending wrists, because she can pose in many different ways. Most collectors do prefer the final version of this body, which is the most common because once this body was developed, it was of course used for all the dolls. This one is known as the bending wrist or BW body. And you can see that it is exactly the same as the articulated torso body, except that she has wrists that move. That is great, and one of the biggest advantages of that is that you can actually remove those hands to help with dressing, whereas all the other dolls, of course, their hands are fixed, and that is a huge advantage. In terms of posability though, other than the wrists, she only poses to exactly the same extent as the previous version. So personally, I really like both of these bodies. And there are in fact several more variations with different names that you should be familiar with these dolls. So you can see that the progression through time does continue beyond the bending wrist body, but all of the following bodies are variations of that, and again, maintain pretty much exactly the same posability and capabilities as that bending wrist body that's so popular. So we do have some others though. The pale-skinned doll, she represents the New Mood collection. She has exactly the same body as the bending wrist Tyler, except that she has additional joints here that allow you to remove her feet and swap them for other feet. People really liked this feature because she came with ballet feet and several other varieties so that she could take on different poses. There are some other Tyler Wentworth dolls that do have removable feet and that came with optional flat feet, but the New Mood ones were the only ones where you could get different varieties such as the ballet feet. Some of the other bodies have even more subtle differences. This one here, who's known as the fit body, she only has one very small difference to the bending wrist body, which is that her arms are a little bit wider here. They're meant to look like she has bigger muscles. From the front, I find it hard to tell that there even is a difference. And again, her posability is exactly the same. This doll here, she has what's called the curvaceous body, and you can see straight away that her bust is much larger than the others. This may potentially look more attractive in some clothing, but I do find that this bust tends to become quite loose, and this doll altogether tends to loosen up and be a bit floppier than some of the others. And you can see that in mine here. I bought this doll new in her box, but she is already quite floppy, and that tends to be a feature of that curvaceous body. Through the same era, Tonner also released a few dolls that had different body types, representing different types of person and styles. So here we have the plus size body that was released with the Emmy dolls and also came out for one of the sisters in the Cinderella collection. In the middle, we have the teenage body, which was released for some Sinister Circus dolls, as well as some of the Twilight dolls and others. And on the right, we have the athletic body, which was primarily for the Deanna Denton, Dee Dee Denton, and also for the Lara Croft Tomb Raider dolls. The Emmy plus size body is very similar to the bending arm Tyler body. It does not have any particular articulation at the legs. She can only go up and down, but she does have those bending elbows and the bending knees. I really think it's a shame that Robert Tonner never upgraded the plus size body, as I do think that it's a nice body that actually looks really great in clothing, but you don't get much posability. And even when he released this body as part of the Cinderella collection, when we had some fantastic bodies for Cinderella and her other sisters, this one maintained that really simple body. And I don't think that that says very much that's good about the inclusivity of that plus size. Teenage body, on the other hand, is fantastic, and again, it's a little bit more realistic in its build and its shape. She is very similar in all her capabilities to the Tyler Wentworth body. She's a little bit shorter, as you can see, compared with Emmy. She has flat feet. And she has less of a distinctive narrow waist and large bust. She has slightly bigger thighs, slightly bigger waist, and a slightly smaller bust. And I do find that a really realistic and nice body to wear clothes. She has a 17 head at the moment, which I've swapped from a different doll. And she can wear the 17 clothes as well, which I really like. The athletic body is one of the most popular and hard to find bodies. It's really beautiful. It has quite a realistic shape and proportions. She's a little bit taller. She's often known as a 17-inch doll, although if you get the Lara Croft version who has flat feet, you will find that she's obviously a little bit shorter and more comparable with the Tyler Wentworth body. This body is known for its beautiful proportions. She looks very attractive in lots of clothes because, of course, she shows that shape off really nicely, that curvaceous shape. She has quite a large bust. She's a little bit wider across the hips. Her arms are quite similar. She has bigger hands than some of the other dolls. Her head is also a little bit bigger. Technically speaking, you can swap heads between Tyler Wentworth and the athletic body, but you will find sometimes that the dolls from the Tyler Wentworth line, their heads do look a little bit small on this body, and heads that were on the athletic body look a bit small on the Tyler one. This body is really beautiful and one of my favourites in the collection. This group of dolls represent the slimmer dolls released by the Tonner Company. I've added in an extra doll in the middle just to show the variations of this body. The first doll is the best known of the bodies. She's Antoinette, and her body is generally known as the Antoinette body because it was first released on her. She is a much slimmer doll. She has quite a small bust. Her figure is considered to be very beautiful and realistic and looks fantastic in a lot of clothes. An advantage for this body is that she can also share clothes most of the time with Jean Marshall and pretty much all the time with Alex from Alexandra Fairchild Ford. She does have slightly bigger feet than those dolls and also than the Tyler Wentworth dolls. So you do often need to find shoes that are made for her, or she will fit Ella and Wild shoes. The second doll is known as the Chic body. It is basically identical to Antoinette. It's just that her bust is slightly larger. So she's often used for more retro style dolls where, the clothing wants to show that figure off a little. The third doll is quite a different body style, but I've put it here to show the comparison. This doll is the Deja Vu doll. She's one of the most popular Tonner releases, and you can see that she looks quite different. Her face, her body, her hands have a slightly less realistic and more cartoony feel. They were designed this way, and I think it is one of the appeals of this doll. She has very similar posability to Antoinette, which is very good. She poses very well, holds poses, and looks very pretty in her clothing. She is slimmer again. She can sometimes share clothes with Antoinette, but not all the time. So just be aware that the Deja Vu body is unique to the Deja Vu line, and she may not be able to share clothes with other dolls. She also doesn't have an ankle joint, and that will again change her posability just a little bit. The final dolls to highlight are the current Tonner releases. These dolls are known as the RTB101 and quite often the RTB102 body on the second doll. The first one here, she is a Grace Marie Fitzpatrick from the Virtual Doll Convention. All of the Grace dolls have this body. There are also several other dolls who do. For example, the Outlander dolls, Scarlett O'Hara, and some of the Wonder Woman dolls released in the late 20-teens years, so 2018 onwards. This body is very recent and only first released in 2022 for the Lacey Churchill doll. This is one of the Lacey dolls. These dolls are a little bit taller than Tyler Wentworth. They also have slightly wider proportions, and they generally will not fit the same clothes as a Tyler Wentworth doll. Their feet are also a little bit bigger, so they're more likely to share shoes with Antoinette or with Ella Wild. These dolls are known for their fantastic posing. They have a very natural style and can take poses in a very natural way. You will notice that the RTB 102 body does not have a bust joint here. That may affect her ability to pose, because obviously the Grace dolls and the RTB 101 dolls can turn to the side like this in quite a realistic way, which Lacey can't do. So you may think that this one is going backwards a little bit. But it just depends how you want to be posing that doll as to whether that is going to make much of a difference to you. The main difference with Lacey and the 102 dolls is the narrower waist here, which is meant to give her more of an hourglass figure, so that she may look potentially more beautiful and also more a retro style when she is dressed. Generally speaking, these dolls are very similar. One thing to be aware of is that the hip piece here is a piece of rubber on both dolls, and that can actually be quite frustrating when dressing the dolls. So do consider what clothing you're going to be wearing. It is better not to have pants that pull on and that are tight, because they can be really difficult to dress these dolls in. To highlight their posability, I've attempted to put all of the dolls, or one variant of each of the main types, into the same challenging side-leaning ballerina pose to show you which ones can do it well and which ones struggle a little bit. Obviously, the first two who have less posability can't really make that pose at all. No side leaning, and even the second one, she looks more like she's jumping for joy. All of the others can do it in not too bad a way. Tyler looks a little bit odd doing it. Her leg can't really hold the right pose, but it's not too bad. Likewise, The athletic body, Deanna Denton, looks a bit clumsy, but she does hold the pose okay. She can't do much side leaning. The last three are definitely the best, with the Deja Vu and the RTB101 definitely winning on side leaning. However, Deja Vu can't really swing her leg much to the side, and nor can Antoinette. So they both struggle a little bit with the leg aspect. RTB101, you can see how much more naturally she poses compared with all of the other dolls. This comes pretty easily to her. There are things she can't do very well, like crossing her legs, but overall, she's a pretty poseable doll. And here we can see how all of them pose or struggle to pose. If you want to see some other comparison videos, please look at my channel. I've already done one that has a pretty good comparison of all the different Elo and Wild bodies, and I do plan to do more. Let me know if there's something in particular you want to see compared, and please subscribe to my channel.